President Donald Trump by the time he takes the podium in the White House briefing room.
You know, and Brett, we're watching the White House briefing room. We're looking at the camera from where we are right now. And I believe I saw someone in a tux. It looks like some people who were in the room where you were somehow made it also to the White House briefing room, which is incredible, talking to Aisha. And I've been to a couple of White House Correspondents Dinner. It's been years, but getting in and out, as she said, is nearly impossible on a good night. But yeah, I'm looking at a woman right now. She has an evening gown on. It's just so striking.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, the press pool travels with the president. I don't know if they managed to get into the vans soon thereafter when the president was escorted off the property. But usually, having been in the press pool many years, you know, it's a close pool, and where the president goes, eventually those reporters go with, and that may be what you're seeing. I think I saw David Spunt walk by there, and he's probably in position as well. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of people in formal wear in the White House briefing room. It was supposed to be a celebration of the First Amendment. Oz Perlman, you know, was going to do his whole routine with the president. The president was expected to talk for, you know, not until later in the evening, but, you know, it was a celebration, really. And the fact that he showed up was a big thing.
I see some familiar faces, people that I'm sure you would recognize as well, as they are now preparing the podium. What happens usually if the president is going to speak in the Brady press briefing room, they will bring in a bevy, sometimes as many as a half dozen Old Glories, American flags, and then they will bring, I imagine, because there were so many individual cabinet members that were there, it is highly likely that they too will speak tonight. Would that be your expectation as well, Brett?
Well, you know, you may have the FBI director talk about what they know. Don't know that for a fact. As we were running out following the Secret Service and their orders to get out of those rooms underneath the Washington Hilton, we passed by Kash Patel, who was talking to a bunch of officials, and he was on site. So I don't know if he'll be there. But clearly this is the president's moment to make a statement about this night, but maybe broadly about the situation in which we live.
All right, Brett, stand by for us. Who is next, folks, in the booth?
I believe we have Martha McCallum with us now. Martha, are you on the line?
Yes. Hi, guys. I am on the line, and we're still here at the Hilton where the dinner took place. We just exited the room a short time ago. We went right through the area where the mags were, where we believe this shooter was apprehended. The video that you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen is the table that we were all sitting at, and it was scary. I mean, everybody dove under the table. The first thing that I saw that registered that something was very wrong was just a slew of Secret Service agents running as hard as they could down the middle of the room. It's an enormous room, very hard to get around the tables. So some of the Secret Service and law enforcement officials climbed on top of the tables. Some people got knocked over. People were climbing and diving underneath the tables once we realized that there was an emergency situation going on. Trace Gallagher's here with me. He was a few feet away from where I was standing. And one of the things that we really noticed on the way out, Trace, is that there's one set of magnetometers. It's very small, and this dinner holds about 2,500 people. So all of those people went through those mags, and that's where they found this shooter, as far as we can tell right now. We're waiting for the president, too, on the left-hand side of your screen. Trace?
And I think it's interesting when you talk about the magnetometers. If you look at any security system around the country, you always go through a stadium. Everybody recognizes stadiums and arenas. You always go through, give your tickets, and then you go through the magnetometers to make sure that you are clear. In this case, the magnetometers, as you can see behind me, behind that blue wall, they were inside the building. So it is our understanding that we believe that this alleged shooter was inside the building at the time by the magnetometers. So that is a concern about, you know, the staging of exactly where the security system and the apparatus was set up. It's interesting because Martha talks about her vantage point when she was, you know, she was literally about 4 tables as you know, we look at the room, she was 4 tables to the right of us, and we were right next to the aisle where it leads to the front, to the stage. So as you come down the main entryway to the area where the president and the White House Correspondents Group was up there, and the vice president, so on and so forth, that is the main area. So when we were there, we were sitting there, and Lawrence Jones was to my right, and he jumped under the table first because Lawrence said, I heard something. I heard some popping. And I was talking to Emily Campagno, who said that she thought that it sounded like somebody, or a waiter or somebody, dropped some dishes, dropped some plates, and she didn't know what it was. We didn't know what we heard. Now, did we hear gunshots? No, we're not saying that. We heard something, and then after that, we knew something was clearly wrong because everybody, the Secret Service agents were running down the hall and running through tables saying, get down, get down, get down, get under the tables, and everybody was jumping under the tables, and you're helping people because, you know, everybody, there's some older people in this building, and everybody sometimes needed help. So you're helping people get under the tables, you're making sure everybody is safe, and then you have Secret Service agents walking around saying, get down, stay down, stay down. We didn't know. We didn't know, was there somebody that was a threat inside the actual auditorium, and that was never clear. That was never the case.
Please stand by. Please stand by. We do apologize. Please stand by as we're trying to get a live feed into the shooting incident at the correspondent dinner where President Donald Trump was evacuated from the correspondent dinner over there in the United States. We're standing by to get some live feed of what happened. Please stand by for us, please, as we get the live feed into the news center here. As President Donald John Trump was evacuated from a correspondent dinner at the White House, where it's believed that, you know, a shot rang out in the area, the vicinity area of where the president was. So we're standing by here to get some live feed into us that we can give to you of what is going on. We're being told that the president is well. He and the First Lady and other members of the
She was
press crew did not get any hurt, but let me get this over to you now.
President Trump.
Just a moment here.
Have you, Bianca and Ed here. Just walk us through what you saw, what you heard when this was.
Let's go over to this section here, please.
Well, I wish I could say.
Please stand by.
That the mood of the country, thanks to the fake news, pushing hatred for so long, is what it is right now. And I will admit, when I walked into this event tonight, I was really looking forward to the president speaking tonight. I think he was going to have a, knockout speech, and that was going to be funny and a huge win for him. But I also knew I was walking into a room of 90% of the people who despise the president. They're members of the fake news. And I expected to see scrutinizing of my ticket, my identification to be shown, as if I were to, show up at an event like I have many times at the White House and other events. They take a look at your ID. They check their database. This was so lax tonight. And I thought, wow, how weird. Like, they asked for my ticket. I pulled it out. I didn't even show them the front of the ticket. They saw the back of the ticket, and they were like, fine, go on in. And, let's think about it. I was surrounded by people who work for CNN. Think what CNN has been spewing for years against the president. There's a lot of people who despise the president in that room, and to have security that lax. We got seated tonight, and we started to, talk to one another, and we were eating our salad and looking forward to the president. Beautiful Melania Trump, the First Lady, walked out with the president. J.D. Vance was there, our vice president. Every secretary of every major, agency in the government was there. And all of a sudden, some loud bangs were heard. I didn't recognize them as gunfire, but everybody hit the ground. We all hit the ground. I was sitting next to Chris Ruddy, and he said that was gunfire. And I looked up, and I'm just about to post this on my social media, and there were special forces, the Secret Service, I'm not sure from which branch of the military, literally running tabletop to tabletop with massive weapons. and clearing out the room. I saw Bobby Kennedy being rushed out. President by then was already rushed out. Vice President was rushed out. And there were incredible amounts of Secret Service military that were taking charge of the room. I don't know if they captured whoever was the instigator.
They have.
He is in custody.
There's a report, though, that an officer was shot in a bullet-resistant vest. He's expected to be okay, Carrie. But the shooter is in custody. We have video of it up right now. The shooter is in custody. Unclear.
I will tell you, I'm sorry, but guys, I walked out, and I walked out as a complete. I'm sorry, he's a fool. Walking out next to Jake Tapper, and I looked at him and I said, "How dare you? You have caused so much division in this country, pushing lies." I said, "You know, we're not going to call it gaslighting anymore. You've lied to the people. How dare you do that?" And I saw so many people from all of these news outlets who've just spread abject lies about President Trump over the years. They're part to blame of this, and I don't mean to get dramatic tonight. But I, as an American mother and an American, I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of the fake news that has just spread nothing but lies, trying to hurt this president, trying to go against the American people. And I couldn't sit there silent and walk out next to somebody like a Jake Tapper and act like he's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, how the media, Carrie, to your point, handles this story, and whether they tell the truth about the threats to this president and the dangerous rhetoric and all that. Your quick final thought, because we're getting closer to the president coming out.
Well, I hope the president delivers what he was going to deliver tonight, which is probably going to be sharp, poignant, and funny.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know who was in charge of security tonight. I felt it was lax. I was very concerned walking in. I thought this is very lax. I've been to a million of these events with the president, never seen it this lax, especially considering the group that we were in. And you know, I think the media from CNN, who I sat and talked to, and I don't play around. I don't act like I like people when I'm in public with them because I'm sitting next to them and we're at an event that's a party. I told the people at CNN, you guys have been derelict in your duties to the American people. I'm always going to do that because I think that as a journalist, you have a duty to tell the truth. And I'm glad that Newsmax is doing that. I look forward to seeing with the president. I'm about 2 blocks from the event waiting for my ride to pick me up. Mm-hmm. We never had our dinner. We never had the enjoyment of hearing the president speak, but we know that we support him.
Yep.
And we're glad he's safe.
We are.
Yep. And we're glad he's safe. Carrie, we're glad you're safe as well. Thank you, Carrie Lake. We'll keep this rolling. By the way, the president's political team just put out a text that a friend shared saying, "I'm addressing the nation at this hour on a matter of great importance. Tune in live. God bless you and God bless the United States of America." Now, if he's just alerting people, you know, to the idea that, hey, I'm addressing this situation, I want you to know, that's one thing. But he says, "I'm addressing the nation on a matter of great importance." I don't know if that suggests that law enforcement has gotten a piece of information about who's behind this or not. I'm not going to speculate. I know we're not going to, but why the president's team put that out to say, hey, this is a matter of great importance. It might just be the threat to the nation. It might be about the threat to the president that is ongoing, but it's interesting.
I know a lot of people were hoping to hear from the president in the more jubilant way his speech would be if he was inside the Hilton tonight, but we will be hearing from the president, and we will be hearing from him.
Okay,
at the
we
White
have
House
video
podium.
now of Erica Kirk being evacuated, I believe, which we're going to put up. I mentioned that a moment ago. Her husband was just assassinated only a few months ago in September. I think we're trying to rack that video.
And she was unable to go to one of her own Turning Point
there
events.
There it is. Okay. So she was being taken out, obviously, with some friends and colleagues, make sure she was safe. Don't want to dramatize it, but it was only a few months ago that, and you can see she looks upset. It was only a few months ago that her husband was gunned down on that college campus. Let's get more information now before we hear from the president directly from Scott Duffy. He's a retired FBI supervisory special agent. And Scott is kind enough to join us. You can see some of the reporters are in the briefing room in gowns.
Please stand by. We're going to break away from this part and go to a different section where we can get some better news into us. As we're being told, U.S. President Donald John Trump was evacuated from a United States press conference dinner a short while ago at the United States Capitol. He is standing by to address the American people and indeed the world.
the president posting on social media that the shooter is in custody and that the First Lady, the Vice President,
and all cabinet members are in, quote, perfect condition. The Secret Service is now investigating the shooting incident. The president is about to speak. When he does, we will bring that to you live. You can see right there in the briefing room as we await the president to come in. You'll notice I'm in a tuxedo, and that is because we raced from the Washington Hilton here to our studios in Washington, D.C. This is a very unusual night, and hence the unusual appearance for this report. Gabe Gutierrez, I understand, has made his way to the White House right now for us. Gabe, you and I were inside the Washington Hilton when this happened. I was seated next to Secretary of State Marco Rubio to one side and the Energy Secretary on the other side. When this commotion happened, everyone hit the ground. Looking, the Secretary of State looking at both his wife, who was across the table, and also at the president, and wanting to see what was happening, as I was trying to tell him to get under the table because they were asking everyone to get under, and then Secret Service and law enforcement going table by table, taking each cabinet member and their spouse out and getting them to a secure location after the president was safely behind the stage, from what we understand, when this first happened. And it was really unclear, Gabe, what was happening. We saw law enforcement come in. There were scores of agents and law enforcement and Secret Service that came in, guns drawn, fingers on the trigger, and they were just rushing through that ballroom, really not letting anything get in their way so they could make a beeline towards the president. Gabe, I know you were sitting just behind me, and I'm not sure if it was who was sitting at your table, but I know there were other cabinet members that were sitting all around us at the NBC News tables.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, it was a surreal experience. Secretary Burgum was at my table. He immediately dropped to the ground along with his wife, as you described other high-level cabinet officials did. And it was extremely remarkable and surreal to see so many Secret Service agents storm into the room. And Tom, this came during the salad course. The president of the WH Correspondents Association had just spoken, introduced the president and the First Lady. The Star-Spangled Banner had played, and there was an energy inside the room as we awaited the president's remarks that all changed completely suddenly with the evacuation of the president of the United States. Now, shortly after that, we did see some posts on social media from President Trump. He had said that he wanted the show to go on, in his words, but that it would be up to law enforcement. And then in a subsequent post, he said that Secret Service had decided that he should be evacuated from the premises. And that's when he announced this press briefing at the White House, which is about to get underway. My colleague Garrett Hake is awaiting those remarks there. And we hope to learn more information about what actually led to this incident, Tom. We had spoken with a witness who had heard what sounded like gunshots in an adjacent room. Again, we are still awaiting the details of what led to this possible shooting, if it was in fact gunshots, or what exactly led up to all of this, Tom. But it was very sudden. The night turned rather dramatically. And again, right now we're waiting to hear from the President of the United States. He says that he wants this event to be rescheduled at some point within the next 30 days, Tom.
Again, we're waiting for the president at any moment. We do have an update right now. We understand the suspect has been arrested and is being treated right now at the hospital. We believe this is for a gunshot wound, but again, this is a very fluid situation. We are still getting details in, and I'm sure we'll learn much more from the president as soon as he takes that podium. We can't stress enough how many people were inside that ballroom at this dinner. Almost the entire cabinet. There is usually a designated survivor, Gabe, and we know even from talking in our talks with the White House, somebody's always a designated survivor, so there is a line of succession that can withstand. But you had everyone from the Secretary of State, as we mentioned, to the Vice President, to the Secretary of Defense, in that room, all seated very close to each other. I'd say 500 to 600 people, I'm not sure the exact number, inside that ballroom, all very crowded. So when the Secret Service rushes in, they didn't have a whole lot of space, but they were able to clear a lane out and get right to the president.
Yeah, that's right. And look, Tom, you had a good vantage point. My back was immediately to the president, so I did not see him being evacuated. My eyes turned to Secretary Burgum, who was at my table, and then the other people. It was a very confusing scene because you did not know exactly what was going on. You heard some noise from the back of the ballroom as those Secret Service agents stormed in, some with guns drawn. And then as soon as you turned around, the president was already gone. Certainly Secret Service agents making it a split-second decision to evacuate the president in any scenario that could potentially threaten his life. But yes, as you mentioned, it wasn't just the president. president. Vice President J.D. Vance was also on stage. Other high-level officials from the Trump administration, the press secretary Caroline Leavitt had just been introduced, and very high-level officials. Now, certainly this dinner, this was the first White House Correspondents Association dinner that President Trump had been set to attend while he was in office. He had attended twice before as a private citizen, and his speech, highly anticipated. Perhaps the tone of his remarks, an administration known of being contentious with the press before. However, the president was set to give remarks. He had been invited by the Correspondents Association, and he had accepted. Certainly a very difficult night.
And we have to remember, we are right now a nation at war with Iran. There was an Iranian plot that the White House has spoken about to kill President Trump. We also know domestically there have been at least two attempts, if not more, on the president's life. One where he was almost killed. Corey Compentori killed there in Butler, sitting just behind him, a local firefighter who lost his life in that assassination attempt. And then we also saw Charlie Kirk and what happened with him, killed in front of a college audience. It is a very, very violent time right now in this country when it's come to political violence, Gabe. And this dinner happened sort of under the auspice of all of that. And that we're a nation at war right now, and the security situations are very, very tricky right now.
Certainly, and look, I did hear somebody cry out from the table next to me, "Not tonight." This was a dinner that was celebrating the First Amendment. It was a time for, journalists, and again, an administration that can at times be combative with the press, but in this particular situation, agreed to come to this dinner. His remarks were highly anticipated to see what tone he might strike, given that there was so much going on across the world. Of course, no one wanted to see what happened here tonight, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions about what exactly did happen. I can tell you security at this event was extremely tight, as you would expect. There were numerous protesters outside of the Washington Hilton protesting the war in Iran, as well as, we've seen protesters before. These dinners often attract protesters that are critical of the administration, especially if the president does attend. But this was a dramatic change just as this dinner was getting underway. It was tightly packed in that room, and it was a dramatic shift. And right now, we're waiting to hear the president's first public comments on camera since this event unfolded just a short time ago.
And we'll hear his perspective, Gabe, which we haven't heard yet. He's posted on Truth Social, but from the videos that we've seen from the pool feeds that were inside, essentially, the pool of cameras that were capturing this event, the president looked right at those front doors when they burst open. That's when we all looked towards the front doors, the entrance to that ballroom, and when Secret Service came rushing in. Ryan, I do want to talk to you about sort of the bit of chaos and why it was such a terrifying scene for the people inside the ballroom, because there were so many people, hundreds of people in there, right? And the Secret Service was jumping table to table. The president is coming in right now with the First Lady. Let's listen in.
That was very unexpected, but incredibly acted upon by Secret Service and law enforcement. And this was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press. And in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way very beautiful, a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, and he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released, for purposes of transparency, clarity, I've ordered it to be put out. You probably have it by now, put out on Truth and put out on many of the platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him, and he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, you know, it's not a particularly secure building. And I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the D.C. police. And we just spoke with the mayor. And when we're finished, the police chief is going to take over and discuss it also from their viewpoint. But they also performed exactly as they were supposed to. And you see the attacker in different positions, but you also see the attacker totally subdued and under control. So as you know, this is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. In Butler, Pennsylvania, less than 2 years ago, you all know that story, and in Palm Beach, Florida, a few months after that, we came close. We really had, again, we had some great work done by law enforcement. But in light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people, and there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched, and I was very, very impressed by that. But First Lady and I were taken very well care of, very quickly rushed off the stage. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's here, was likewise beautifully done. He was just saying how quickly everybody acted, law enforcement, Secret Service in particular in this case, but law enforcement. Marco had the same thing. Pete was there. Pete didn't want any help. He didn't want anybody to help him. He doesn't want anybody to help him, but he did get some, didn't you? And I think you also said that it was very impressive. So with that, I'd like to ask Todd Blanche to come up, say a few words, and tell you it's already underway. The man has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California, and he's a sick person, a very sick person, and we don't want things like this to happen. I think it's very important that I say, though, and I told the representatives of the evening, they did such a beautiful job. It was such a beautiful evening. And again, they're talking about free speech in our Constitution. That's what it's all about, not just White House correspondence. It was really based on free speech in our Constitution. But I said very importantly that we'll do it again within the next 30 days, and we'll make it bigger and better and even nicer. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved. I also want to thank the press, the media. You've been very responsible in your coverage. I will say I've been seeing what's been out. You've been very responsible. So Todd Blanche, I'd like to say a few words, and then we're going to have cash. And then you're going to go on. We can ask, I guess we can take a couple of questions. I want to thank the First Lady that was a rather traumatic experience for her. There was a lot of action taking place up there very quickly. But again, the response time was really incredible. And we're going to reschedule. We're going to do it again. We're not going to let anybody take over our society. We're not going to cancel things out because we can't do that. We wanted to stay tonight. I will tell you, I fought like hell to stay. But it was protocol. They said, please, sir, because they didn't know there was a lot of action going on, and they didn't know could there be probably a lone shooter, but we'll find out. We'll find out very quickly. they have it very well under control. So I want to thank you. Todd Blanche, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Tonight you saw the very worst and the very best of this country. You saw the very worst by the actions of that coward that the president just talked about. But you also saw the very best because you saw law enforcement do exactly what they're supposed to do. And you'll see the videos come out, I expect, very shortly, and you'll see law enforcement do exactly what we want them to do. And so I echo what what President Trump just said, that we are extraordinarily grateful and appreciative of the men and women of law enforcement that did their jobs tonight, including one who was injured. This investigation is ongoing. I expect you will see charges filed shortly. The charges should be self-evident given the conduct, but as you'll hear, there will be multiple charges surrounding the shooting, around the possession of firearms, and anything else that we can get on this guy. The investigation is obviously ongoing and just started. There is federal law enforcement already working on search warrants and doing their job, and I don't want to get ahead of them and don't want to get ahead of the work that they're doing even as we speak. Director Patel and I were just on the crime scene a short while ago, and everybody in this room should rest assured that the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI, Secret Service, everybody's on the scene doing their job. I know that the police chief is going to give an update from the scene as soon as we're finished here, and I obviously will lead the details of what they have learned to him. But in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody in this room for the courage, and I want to thank President Trump for his words, and I promise you, justice will be served. Thank you, Dr. Patel.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. President. The President's absolutely right. You saw the best resolve of American law enforcement because you, Mr. President, inspire them 24/7, 365. You give them the resources that they need, and they know that you have their back. And that is a changing dynamic in this country, and that's why you saw brave Secret Service agents respond immediately, swiftly, subdue and take down the suspect, and safeguard the lives of thousands of individuals at that hotel. Thanks to our interagency partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI was rapidly deployed onto the scene, took over the evidence response unit, is examining all the ballistics that were found on scene to include the long gun and the shell casings. We are conducting witness interviews as we speak. You will hear from our team on the scene there with the mayor and the head of the FBI field division there. But please know what the Attorney General has just said reigns no truer. You saw the very best of America tonight. The very best unite us at a time of uncertainty, because we have leadership here with the President and the Vice President that backs law enforcement, and the men and women that I shook their hands on the scene today could not have been prouder to show up on scene. And as the Attorney General said, make no mistake, we are conducting witness interviews. If you have any information whatsoever related to this event, 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-CALL-FBI. No piece of information is too small. No piece of information is inadequate. We will evaluate it all. We will also be conducting interviews of those that were there. And if any of those individuals have information, please come forward to law enforcement or the FBI or the Metropolitan Police Department. We will be examining this individual's background thoroughly. That process has already started, and we are going to ensure that he was either a lone wolf actor or anyone else that was responsible. We will analyze all evidence immediately to make sure that we safeguard this country. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, thank you for your leadership. Attorney General and Homeland Secretary Merlin, thank you for your partnership in law enforcement.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do a couple, and then we go to the chair. Madam Chairman, I just want to say you did a fantastic job. What a beautiful evening, and we're going to reschedule. And after that, it's very tough for her to ask a killer question, right? But you have done a fantastic job. Please.
Mr. President, I appreciate it. As you mentioned, it all happened so quickly, and I wonder, especially because unfortunately you have experience with these sorts of threats. In that moment, when you realized there was a threat and service agents were telling us to get down, can you describe what was going through your mind, how you were feeling in that moment?
That's a very good question, actually. It's always shocking when something like this happens. It's happened to me a little bit, and that never changes. The fact, we were sitting right next to each other, First Lady, am I right? And I heard a noise and sort of thought it was a tray. I thought it was a tray going down. I've heard that many times, and it was pretty loud noise. And it was from quite far away. He hadn't breached the area at all. They really got him. But so it was quite far away, but it was a gun. And some people really understood that pretty quickly. Other people didn't. I was watching to see what was happening. Probably should have gone down even faster. Melania was very cognizant, I think, of what happened. I think she knew immediately what happened. She was saying, that's a bad noise. And we were whisked away along with other people, but we were really whisked away. And again, the performance of the Secret Service and the police, all of the law enforcement, I thought was really good. So it was very quick. There wasn't a lot of time to be thinking, because it was a matter of seconds before we were out the door and gone into an area. We very much, and you wanted to too, we very much wanted to continue it, because I don't like to let these sick people, these thugs, these horrible, horrible people, change the fabric of our life, change the course of what we do. So we held out. You were there. We held out right till the end, but they didn't want to take a chance, and I understand there was protocol. But we're going to be doing one hopefully within the next 30 days or sooner, and I am ready, willing, and able. And I was all set to really rip it. And I said to my people, this would be the most inappropriate speech ever made if I said one. So I'll have to save it. I don't know if I could ever be as rough as I was going to be tonight. I think I'm going to be probably very nice. I'll be very boring the next time, but we're going to have a great event. And you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. There's a report in the New York Post that this assailant assembled his weapon somewhere on site at the hotel. What do you think about that? And I ask respectfully, why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this, where they got them. But the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much, because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names there, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We've taken this country, and we were a laughing stock for years, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've changed this country. And there are a lot of people that are not happy about that. So I think that's the answer, Peter.
And after Butler, your team for a while rethought outdoor events.
Yeah.
Do you think that you now need to rethink indoor?
Well, but then you just don't do events. No, I can't do that. I have to. It is what it is. We have to do it. The room was very, very secure. You know, he charged from 50 yards away, so he was very far away from the room.
And what did you think when you saw the video of how fast he was running?
He was moving. He was really moving. And the reaction time was great. Boy, those guys, they had their guns drawn literally by the time he was there. They were shooting.
That's right.
I thought they were very impressive. And if I didn't, I'd let you know. I'm not going to be, I would not stand for that. No, I thought they were very impressive.
Thank you, President Trump, and thank you for updating us on the suspect earlier. Were you aware of any threats? Was your team aware of any threats beforehand? And do you believe you were the target of this tonight?
I guess. I mean, these people they're crazy. They're crazy, and you never know. He was very far away from me. He had to go through a lot. We had resources all over. We had resources sitting at tables, literally in disguise, sitting maybe at your table, who knows? But we had people all over the room, so he had a long way to go. That was really a first line of defense, and they got him. And they really, they acted incredibly. No, there was no notification. We had no idea. Go ahead, Kevin.
Do you know any political motivations from this?
Well, you never know. Now, we'll be able to tell you that maybe by tomorrow or the next day. He's in custody, and they're asking him a lot of questions. I guess they're going over, Todd, and they're already at his apartment. He lives in California.
Yes, sir.
And they'll be They're over there, so they'll be able to tell you. Thank you, Caitlin.
President Trump, did the suspect say anything, or was he wearing anything that would allege some type of motive here?
Nothing, no. I mean, he was a guy who looked pretty evil when he was down. You know, they had him down. He was fighting hard. He was in my opinion, a sick person. Who would do that but a sick person? But I think you're going to find everything about him. No reason to talk about it now. But tomorrow at this time, long before this time, you're going to know a lot of things about him. They seem to think he was a lone wolf, and I feel that too.
Are you concerned about U.S. Secret Service protection ability? We saw several of the detailees take minutes to be escorted out the room.
No, they acted very quickly. No, I was very impressed by Secret Service. I mean, I'm the one, and Mark Wayne, you would agree with that, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm the one that would complain. You don't have to complain for me. I would be complaining. I'd be up here right now saying they didn't do their job. Oh, believe me, because, you know, it's my life, and I want to live because I want to make this country great. That's why I want to live. But when you're impactful, they go after you. When you're not impactful, they leave you alone. Okay, a couple of more. Go ahead, please.
Is there any indication that this shooting could have been linked to the war in Iran?
I don't think so, but you never know. We're going to know a lot. We have the best people in the world working on it, and we're going to know a lot. Please.
Mr. President, there's a lot. You, as well as some of us who have covered Butler, experienced another horrific day 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What felt similar? You know, you had the First Lady with you today. What felt different? And you have another 2+ years in office. Are you concerned about something like this happening
Well, I
again?
can't be concerned. I can only get great people. They did the job, in my opinion, a much better job than Butler. Butler had one weak spot that we all know about. Somebody should have been up there. But even Butler, we had our sniper on our side within 4.2 seconds from a distance of about 400 yards, one shot, and he was gone. And if he didn't do it now, you know, he's David. His name was David. I say, hello, David, every time I see him. David, I like you very much, David. But think of that. Now, if he doesn't hit him, and he hit him right between the eyes from 400 yards without any notice, nobody knew. He heard a sound. He looked over, and there was actually a tree that was somewhat in his way. You know the story very well. And he aimed, he fired, and if he didn't do that, beyond me, you would have had a lot more people killed. We lost one great person and 2 people very badly hurt. They're okay now. But no, that was, so in a sense, you know, that was pretty amazing, the job they did. But they did have that one weak spot. As you know, they should have had that covered. Tonight, they had everything covered very quickly. And he was fast. He was running full blast, and they got him before they got any further. I was very far away. You know, he hadn't anywhere close to breach the doors of the ballroom. The ballroom was sealed, and everybody in there. That's why once those doors opened, they didn't want to do tonight. If the doors weren't opened, we could have probably done it tonight, but I think we're much better off rescheduling. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, for you and perhaps law enforcement as well, what is the level of confidence that this was a lone actor, and has the suspect made any statements to police while in custody?
Yeah, I think it's just it's not my profession. We have great professionals up here and outside that have been working with us. My impression is he was a lone wolf, whack job. These are crazy people. And they have to be dealt with. We had that in the second attempt, as you know, and he's spending life in prison. Because if you let him out, they'll probably, you know, if he serves 10 years or 15 years, you let him out, he'll probably try it again with somebody else. They're sick people. We have a lot of sick people. But you're going to know, I think very shortly, you're going to know, Todd, a lot about him. You're going to know a lot about him. Yeah, a couple of more. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Are you concerned about political violence? This could be politically motivated.
All violence. I'm concerned about everything. Look, but I can't be so concerned that you can't function. No, I'm here. It's a dangerous profession. You know, I tell the story, race car drivers, I think it's very dangerous. So if you take 1% and then take about 10% of 1%, just to break it down very easily, they die. So much less than 1%, 10% of 1%. I think bull riding is very dangerous. If you take about the same, 10% of 1%, much less than 1%. But if you take presidents, it's 5.8%. And about 8% are shot at. So nobody told me this was such a dangerous profession. If Marco would have told me, maybe I wouldn't have run. Maybe I would have said, I'll take a pass. No, it's a dangerous profession, but I don't view it that way. Look, I'm here to do a job. As part of the job, it is a dangerous, I can't imagine that there's any profession that's more dangerous. But I love the country, and I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the job we've done. You see what's happened. We have a great country. We've got, I think, the most successful, the hottest country anywhere in the world. This happened over a period of just a year, and we're going to do great things. But with that come risks. There's no question about it. Yeah.
To that end, I mean, there's been so much political violence, not just aimed at yourself, but at other members of Congress, state house speakers, you name it. Is that just the cost of doing business to do politics in America anymore?
Yeah, well,
what does that say about our country?
Too. We're not the only country. You look at this great violence with all countries. I was talking to somebody from another country today, and they have numerous assassinations of political figures all over the world. You look at South America, it's like some of the numbers are just horrific. It's dangerous stuff, whether it's here or someplace else. No country is immune. No country. Good question.
Will we turn that temperature down at this point?
Well, probably if I decided to just not do much, if I let everybody rip us off and take advantage of us. Look, we're leading the world in trade now. We're leading the world in the military. We're the greatest military in the world. I rebuilt it in my first term, and now we use it because we have no choice. We can't let, as an example, Iran, we can't let them get a nuclear weapon. Everything will be peanuts compared to that if they ever were given a nuclear weapon, and they'd use it too. Marco and I were talking about it today. They would use it without even hesitation. We can't do that. It was a shame. I said, oh boy, look at the numbers. We just broke 50,000 in the Dow. We just broke 7,000 in the S&P. They said we couldn't do it in 7 years, in 5 years, 4 years. They were saying maybe in 5 or 6 years. And we did it in 1 year. And I called everybody together. I called all of these people and others, and I said, we have to take a little journey. I seek to do this. We just had the great number. We just broke 50,000. Wasn't supposed to happen during my term. Wasn't reachable. We did it in 1 year, and I said, we're going to have to make a journey to Iran. They're going to have a nuclear weapon if we don't do it. We had the B-2 bombers take them out. I terminated in the first term the Obama agreement, the Iran nuclear agreement, which was a disaster. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. They would have used it. They would have used it 100%. So, when you do things like that, you become a target. If I wasn't doing that, I guess I'd be a lot less of a target. But I'm honored to be. Okay, one more question. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, President Trump. Do you know how the gun was brought into the hotel? And also, how does this event impact you as the leader of our country? Do you think it will change your
leadership? I like not to think about it. I lead a pretty normal life, considering it's a dangerous life. I think I handle it as well as it can be handled. I think a lot of other people, you read stories where they become basket cases. To be honest with you, I'm not a basket case. I really take it as it is. I do it for the country. I'm not doing it for any other reason. I have a first lady who's doing a terrific job. She loves the country, and she recognizes it better than anybody. She's told me numerous times. She said, you are in a dangerous job. But that goes along with her, too. I mean, it's dangerous for her, too. We sat there tonight. We heard that noise, and it was either a tray or a bullet. I was hoping it was a tray, but it wasn't. And again, we had some very brave people doing a great job, so we're very proud of them and happy with them. I just want to thank everybody. They will be able to give you all that information as to the names and everything else. I think we released the names already. Most of you would have it, but his name. We appreciate it. I see so many tuxedos and beautiful dresses. It was a little different evening than we thought, but we're going to do it again, and we have a great chairman who we're so proud of, and we have to make it better. We'll make it safer, I guess, right? But we're going to make it even better. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump, so we hear from her about how impactful this was. Can we hear from her about?
Well, honey, would you want to say something?
Okay.
Huh?
In the back.
One in the back.
Many of the people across the globe, in fact, are watching you. You demonstrated courageous leadership, and thank God you're alive. All of us are alive today. What is the message that you want to give to the world that this should change? What corrective measures can we take from here on?
Well, all you can do, look, I don't care how many people you have, how good they are. They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble. I would say, Pete, right? You know, they can make trouble. Some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts. So it can be trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, and he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. It was very impressive the way they got him, because a lot of people would be looking and saying, you know, it's like a weird feeling, and they would let him get through, but they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. And what do we do? But it comes with the territory. And if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But we're going to continue to do a great job. That's all I can do. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
We've just been listening to the president speak after shots were fired just outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner at the Washington Hilton in the nation's capital. The president saying a man who lives in California charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons before being taken down by the Secret Service. I'm going to ask our director to roll that video that has been released now by the White House. You can see how fast this man was coming. Look to the left side of your screen, sprinting right past Secret Service when they draw their weapons and begin to fire. The shooter was not able to breach the doors to the ballroom dinner. The president also sharing that a Secret Service agent was shot in the chest but was saved by a bulletproof vest. The president saying he heard a loud noise and thought it was the sound of a tray going down, and he was quickly rushed off the stage. The president also praising law enforcement for acting quickly and saying he hopes he will be able to share more on the shooter's motivations in the coming days. The White House also releasing a photo of the alleged shooter taken down by both Secret Service and D.C. law enforcement. This is a picture right now. One of the images they've released two different images of the shooter. It's still unclear, one, how he brought the weapon into the Washington Hilton, how he was able to bring that weapon into the hotel where the dinner was being hosted. Two, how he was able to at least run as fast as he was, running through at least one perimeter. But again, the president making it very clear he was very far from the entrance to the ballroom. Essentially saying that his life, the president's life, it was in danger, but not in danger in the sense that the man was so close he could start firing through the doors or at least into the ballroom. And again, we're still learning a lot as we get more information from the White House. At any minute, we're waiting for D.C. Police, the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, along with the D.C. Mayor, Mayor Bowser, to host a news conference to give us some information. As soon as that starts, we're going to bring that to you live. Gabe Gutierrez is at the White House for us tonight, along with our team. Garrett was in there as well. Garrett Hake, who asked the president a question about essentially political violence in America right now. We've seen this happen at state houses. We've seen it happen across the country. 2 or more attempts on the president's life. And now what we saw tonight here at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Gabe, the president also saying he started to study assassination attempts because of what's happened to him, and he's learned a lot from them, and also making the case for the ballroom that is now in the hands of a court, and the reason that it should be built because it can be protected better. The president questioning the security at the hotel, saying it was not very secure in the president's word. We went through security. We saw that there were metal detectors there, but it is a hotel. There are some policies the hotel has to follow with guests that are staying in the hotel that are not going to the dinner. It's not exactly a perfect place to host this in the sense that things like this can happen, and they did tonight.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, the president said in his view that this was not a particularly secure building, but he went out of his way repeatedly to praise the actions of the Secret Service and of law enforcement that were there on the scene. You mentioned the suspect. Yes, as we speak, according to the president, law enforcement is going through the suspect's apartment. He lives, according to the president, in California. The president saying that he believed that this was a lone wolf. But it's unclear if he had any political motivations here. The president did not seem to believe that this had anything to do with the ongoing war in Iran. But certainly, Tom, it was the president's initial reaction, what he said when he first heard some sounds. He said it was, he thought, some trays potentially being dropped. But as you were right there, just sitting across in the next table from me, this all happened very quickly. Secret Service whisked him away. Now, the president releasing, really just as he began talking, that striking video of the suspect sprinting past the security checkpoint. You're right, the security checkpoint significantly outside of where the ballroom doors were. The suspect never got to the ballroom doors. The president saying that he was stopped very quickly by the Secret Service. But yes, the president is suggesting this was not a particularly secure building, using the opportunity to argue for why he needs a secure event space here at the White House. The president, of course, very fond of holding indoor events. And even next week, we expect the president to hold a state visit here at the White House by King Charles. The president saying that, of course, after the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, some of his outdoor events, security there was reconsidered. He was asked whether security at indoor events might be reconsidered. But the president saying that he was satisfied with the how the Secret Service responded to this particular incident. Significant, though, Tom, revealing that the suspect did allegedly fire on these officers, and that an officer could have lost his life if not for the bulletproof vest that he was wearing. But again, this investigation very early on, the president saying that he believes it is a lone wolf, but political motivation still unclear at this point, Tom.
Can take no chances in this type of political atmosphere. Gabe Gutierrez, stand by for us. I want to bring in Garrett Hake, who was inside that briefing room, and you had a chance to speak with the president. Garrett, talk to me about the way you saw the president. You were just inches from him in that news conference. Actually, Garrett, stand by. The D.C. mayor's about to speak. Let's listen in.
Right, we're going to the mayor.
All right. Are we ready, guys? Start. Okay. All right, man. We're ready whenever you are.
Good evening. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. I am joined by members of my public safety team and federal law enforcement, including the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, the Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, as well as FBI Field Office, Darren Cox. We're here to provide you an update on the incident that took place tonight at 8:36 p.m. at the Washington Hilton at the site of the White House Correspondents Dinner. At about that time, a sole gunman rushed a Secret Service checkpoint in a lobby at the hotel. Secret Service agents stopped the suspect. An agent was injured and transported to a local hospital where the agent is receiving care. The suspect is also transported to a local hospital where he is being evaluated. The president returned safely to the White House, as you know. We are so very thankful to members of law enforcement who did their jobs tonight and made sure that all guests were safe. We have no reason to believe at this time that anyone else was involved. I want to turn to the Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, Chief Carroll, to provide a law enforcement update and specifics.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'm Jeff Carroll, Interim Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department. This afternoon, this evening, members of the United States Secret Service and the Metropolitan Police Department were here at the Washington Hotel for a site detail for the Correspondents' Dinner. As the mayor mentioned, at approximately 8:36 tonight, an individual charged a U.S. Secret Service checkpoint here in the lobby area of the hotel. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. As he ran through that checkpoint, members of law enforcement from the United States Secret Service intercepted that individual. This is a very preliminary investigation at this point. We do know that law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the individual. We do know that a U.S. Secret Service uniformed division officer was struck in his vest. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. He seems to be in good spirits at this time. The suspect in this case, he was not struck by gunfire. However, he was transported to a local hospital to be evaluated. Again, we're very early in the investigation. We have members of the United States Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the FBI here to continue to investigate this matter. But at this point, it does appear he is a lone actor, a lone gunman. There does not appear to be any sort of danger to the public at this time. However, we are continuing to investigate this matter. At this point, I will turn it over to, I believe, the FBI.
Hi, good evening. I'm Darren Cox. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Washington Field Office. The American public should be proud of the quick response and heroic actions from law enforcement officers tonight to keep the American public safe. Their actions are absolutely heroic. The public should also rest assured that there will be no stone unturned during this investigation. The FBI currently has our Joint Terrorism Task Force here on scene, along with our Criminal Division, our Crisis Response Team, and agents from across the country are working on any leads that may come in this investigation. Anyone with tips in this investigation should call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you.
Director Kern.
Thank you. My name is Sean Kern. I'm the Director of the Secret Service. Tonight, we saw exactly what our brave men and women do each and every day to protect our protectees. It's not easy, and I will tell you that they performed admirably. We got to see what they do, and that individual, when he charged a checkpoint, was apprehended. It shows that our multi-layered protection works, and I'm grateful to our partners that help assist us with building these sites and protecting these sites. Very fortunate that this officer is alive, is being observed, and I'm grateful that the President reached out to this officer and spoke with him earlier. I ask everybody to pray for him and all of our officers and agents that were involved, and I will tell you, we will continue with the mission. Thank you.
Judge Bureau.
I'm Janine Pirro. I'm the United States Attorney. Right now, the defendant is being charged with 2 counts, 924C, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and a second crime under 111, which is assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Now, as you all know, there was an individual, a uniformed Secret Service officer, who was shot, and fortunately, he is doing all right and he will be fine. But it is clear, based upon what we know so far, that this individual was intent on doing as much harm and as much damage as he could. And thankfully, because of the checkpoint right outside the ballroom, where thousands of people were situated to hear the President of the United States, because that checkpoint worked, there was no one who was injured when it was clear where this defendant was going. Now, I want to make one comment. As a participant, someone who was in the ballroom, who came this evening to be part of a very lovely event at the White House Correspondents Dinner, I, for the first time, was in a situation where there were shots fired, shots heard, and a whole room went silent. When I lifted my head and when I looked up, every law enforcement officer was out there as we all had our heads down, thousands of them. These are the men and women every day who do what they do silently, and they do it with courage and with dignity. Thank God for our partners, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police, all of them tonight acted so quickly that they prevented what could have been a horrific event where we were all sitting there in one room. The defendant will be arraigned on Monday in federal district court, but make no mistake, there will be many more charges based upon the information that we are learning in this very fluid situation. Thank you.
Take a few questions. Right here in the front, right here in the front.
Confirm that this suspect is specifically targeting the president and isn't talking to law enforcement now?
Sure. So at this point, what we know is we know the individual charged the checkpoint with a firearm in his hand. We know he was running in the direction of the ballroom that the president was in, as well as other cabinet members. So what his specific motivation was, we can't say at this point. However, as we continue to investigate that, we'll continue to work towards that.
Chief, when you say you're talking to law enforcement,
Layered approach. The point of this checkpoint is to intercept individuals that were there, and what we see in this case is when he reached that checkpoint, Secret Service agents and law enforcement engaged him immediately. They were able to bring him into custody and prevent anyone from being harmed.
Chief,
Right here.
Chief Carroll, can you tell us if you found a vehicle associated with the suspect? And are you and the FBI conducting any search warrants either on vehicle or locations here or elsewhere around the country?
Sure, Mark. So as you can imagine, this is very early in the investigation. So, the things we're digging into is his background, vehicles. Those are all things that the FBI, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the Secret Service are working together jointly to determine, is there anything else that's available? So I would imagine as we continue to go through this investigation, there will be additional search warrants and things of that nature as the investigation progresses.
Is the suspect known to law enforcement?
At this point, he was not known to the Metropolitan Police Department, I can tell you that.
Right here.
there are multiple other parties and events happening associated with this weekend tonight. Is there any reason to believe that there will be security concerns at those events? Are there preparations being made locally to protect those attendees?
Yeah, absolutely not. So we have no indication. This is an isolated incident with one individual is the information that we do have. However, we do have additional officers across the city that are giving special attention. We do know there were some after parties and events that are planned that we will be providing coverage for those events.
Yep, right here. The president said that this is not a particularly secure building. Can you prove that assessment?
I'm not exactly 100% familiar with this building. I do know in this incident tonight, I know there was a security plan that was developed by the Secret Service that the Metropolitan Police Department assisted with, and I know that security plan did work this evening.
Right here.
Thank you so much. Do you know specifically if President Trump was a target of this attack? And can you speak to the reporting about the suspect assembling a long weapon and get into the ballroom?
Yes, as we said before, we do know the president was inside the ballroom. We know there was cabinet members and many guests in there. Who specifically he was targeting at this point, that's part of the investigation. We do know that he was armed with a shotgun when he ran through that checkpoint, so that would look like a long weapon in video.
All right, right here, right here, right
Can
here.
you clarify, earlier you said there was an exchange of gunfire. Did the suspect fire any shots, and did the uniformed officer, do you know yet which weapon he was shot with?
Yeah, obviously we're only a couple hours into this incident, so we don't have that level of information. The FBI's evidence response team is here. They're processing the scene. So as the investigation develops, all that information will be figured out with the ballistics. The ATF is also on scene here with us.
So the suspect did or did not fire a shot?
Sure. So again, it's very preliminary information. We do believe he did. However, as the investigation determines, we'll pull the shell casings. We'll be able to get more information as we review more evidence. We're very early in the investigation.
All right, we can take a couple more right here, and one more over here.
Thank you so much. So, the president said that he wants there to be another event within 30 days. Given what happened tonight, any sense of what additional security measures might be put in place to ensure that something similar does not happen again?
Sure. I'll toss it to the Secret Service.
Yep, this is what we plan for every day. So we take each and every case and we evaluate it, and we do site assessments. And that's why we go out and build these sites per what the event is, and that's how we go about our business.
Will there be any changes or added measures given that this did happen?
We're going to have to evaluate this evening.
I understand.
Is there any indication how the suspect got into the hotel? Was it a guest here? Are you searching rooms?
So preliminary information, we do believe he was a guest here at the hotel. We have secured a room here in the hotel, and again, we'll go through the appropriate procedures to determine what was inside there. But that is secure. At this point, like I said, we believe he is the only suspect in this case.
Okay, to jump on that question, I understand the multi-approach to security. To walk in with a weapon of that caliber and elevate to law enforcement on the local level seems to be quite extraordinary. How does that happen?
Sure. So again, I mean, we're very early in the investigation, so we'll have to determine, we'll go through video across the hotel to figure out how the gun got in, how it got down here. Those things will come through the investigation. At this point, we don't have that level of detail.
Okay, last one.
Yes, video appears to show the president falling down and being escorted out. Was he injured at all during his evacuation?
No, we don't have any information that he was injured.
All right, thanks.
Could you verify how he was detained? If he was not shot, could you verify how he was detained?
Sure. So law enforcement right here in this very area, they actually tackled him to the ground and handcuffed him.
And how many people were in the hospital?
Can you give us his name?
Not at this time. We will release his name, Mark, once we have all the information. Again, we're still running a lot of things down. Judge. In the hospital, so we have the Uniform Division Secret Service officer who's being evaluated at the hospital who took a round to the vest, and the suspect is being evaluated, but he was not struck by gunfire.
Are you looking at any terrorism charges?
Well, as the chief just indicated, we're very early in this investigation, but make no mistake, if there is anything like that, we will find it and we will file it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been listening to Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser speak alongside law enforcement about the shooting incident at the White House Correspondents Dinner. We've learned a lot of new information. I'm going to have our director run the video that the White House has released of the gunman running through. Police now telling us he had a long gun believed to be a shotgun as he sprinted through this initial perimeter before getting as he was headed towards the ballroom. He did not get anywhere near the ballroom, that according to law enforcement. He exchanged gunfire with the Secret Service. A Secret Service officer was shot, but he had a bulletproof vest. He's being treated in the hospital. The president has spoken to that officer, and he's recovering and okay. The suspect was a guest at the hotel at the Washington Hilton. It's unclear if he assembled his gun inside his hotel room, if he had brought the gun to the hotel room. Police are actively investigating that right now. They're looking inside of the hotel room. They have not released his name. They're saying he's a man from California, and they're emphasizing this seems to be a lone wolf incident. They do not think at this point he had any accomplices, and it does not look like there are any more threats, at least not tonight, from what police have seen. Garrett Hake was inside the briefing room when the president spoke about the incident. And if I could also ask our director to roll the video when the president and the mentalist Oz Perlman, along with the First Lady, were speaking on stage when this whole thing happened. Garrett, tell our viewers exactly what the president says he saw, because he described that he thought it was a tray falling. What he probably heard was the gunfire before the Secret Service rushed in. This is the moment here, Garrett.
Yeah, the president said it all happened very fast. He wasn't really able to process it, Tom, much like the rest of us in the room, and that he thought what he heard was a waiter dropping a tray. There are thousands of people in that ballroom. It is quite noisy. It only became clear to him, as it did for, I think, many of the rest of us in the room, when Secret Service rushed the stage, covering him and the First Lady and taking them out, that this was a much more serious situation. It didn't register at the time that it was gunshots. That's consistent with, I think, the experience of most of the people in the room who heard a loud noise that couldn't be identified at the moment, and then the sort of rush from every angle of law enforcement into the ballroom.
Yeah, Garrett, we were in there. All of us were. I was seated next to the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Energy. We all hit the floor. The Secretary of State looking at his wife, who was across the table, and at the president. I was trying to get him to come down as well, but he wanted to sort of get a gauge of the situation because it was so chaotic. And then we saw Secret Service jumping from table to table and just taking out each cabinet member to make sure they were safe. You had a chance to ask the president about sort of the temperature of the country right now. Over the last few years, he has seen 2 assassination attempts, maybe more than that. The White House has said the Iranians, there was a plot to kill him as well. We've also seen this happen with Democratic governors in Pennsylvania and other local officials in Minneapolis as well. It's been a dangerous time to be in politics in America.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I covered Capitol Hill before I came to the White House, where threats have skyrocketed in the years since January 6th. And so this culture of political violence has been kind of omnipresent. And I asked the president about that. And earlier in the evening, he had suggested that, he thinks he's a target because he is a president of such consequence. He compared himself to Abraham Lincoln and suggested that that's what happens when you do big things. I sort of pressed him on that idea. Is this the cost of doing business to be a politician in America right now? And he said yes, and not just in America, that he thinks this is a global issue of this political violence, but it's necessary, in his view, to be a person who does big things, and related it to his efforts to pursue his war in Iran right now. And so the president, who's been quite reflective on this, he said earlier in the evening that he has studied assassinations. He talked about percentages of presidents who've been targeted by assassins. And we know from other interviews that he's given that he has, since Butler, thought a lot about his own mortality. I think that was obvious in his remarks here tonight as well.
And as we report this out, we should tell our viewers, it stands to reason the target of this potential assassination attempt was the president, but we also cannot stress enough how many cabinet members were in there.
That's
there
right.
were so many important members of our government, of the American government, that were inside that ballroom, all seated very close together. And luckily, the Secret Service and D.C. law enforcement were able to act and stop this alleged gunman before he got anywhere near the ballroom. Julie Sirkin is outside the Washington Hilton. She's been reporting for us out on the street as both demonstrators started before this dinner and then after the scenes that we've seen as the president left was rushed out to the White House. Julie, I understand there was another situation that unfolded in front of you.
Yeah, I've been standing out here along with my producer, Kyle Stewart, our cameraman. Again, Tom, just like you, still dressed from the dinner. We walked out here. They've barricaded this area. You can see police tape behind me. It's all around this area. The Hilton is to my right corner. But what just happened was, again, they're not letting people through. This is a residential neighborhood. There are hotels everywhere. Guests who are staying at the hotels couldn't even get access inside. A woman, I appeared to be a woman, driving a car. She pulled up right here, right next to me, where you see the camera panning right now. Again, you see the police vehicles here. And I heard her being stopped by the officer, asked her who she is, and the woman appeared to say, "I am the Minnesota councilwoman. I am the effing First Lady of the United States." And, put her foot on the pedal, hit gas, and just sped down this street. And then the cop had chased her. I don't know where that stands now, of course, but it just shows you that this is such an active and real situation still, even though the guests have left the ballroom, even though we are one of very few media left here. Things were starting to quiet out a little bit. They just held that press conference with the chief of police, Tom, that you were talking about and listening to, just feet from here, and yet this just happened. So it just shows you that this is still a security situation. They are still trying to figure out what's going on, and that there are still potentially people, even though you heard Janine Pirro say there was just one person involved, there could still be potentially people who they are monitoring out here.
Julie Sirkin, you and your team, please stay safe out there as you continue to report this story out. This is still an ongoing situation. The investigation is just getting started in D.C. Gabe Gutierrez is covering this one for us from the White House as well. The president made a lot of remarks inside that briefing room, and one of the things he wanted to highlight was he is in court right now, battling to finish his ballroom, which is a massive ballroom. Underneath there will be a military bunker of sorts, which the courts have allowed to be built, but it's the ballroom above ground that has been very controversial and is now being challenged in the courts. And the president tonight pointing to this incident, saying we need a safer space to bring our leaders, to bring world leaders to come to Washington and to be able to protect them.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, the president arguing that $400 million ballroom will be funded by private donations, and that's why it needs to happen. Certainly, right now it's stuck in the courts, but he is making the argument that if he wants to hold large events at the White House, indoor events, that he does use this opportunity to argue for why that ballroom is necessary. The president, someone that likes to hold these large events with potentially world leaders or heads of state, and have many cabinet officials, and he used this opportunity in order to argue for that ballroom, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez first. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, we've been covering the breaking news that happened at the White House Correspondents Association dinner tonight, right here in the nation's capital. A gunman, you can see on the left hand of your screen, running past Secret Service, a checkpoint there, exchanging gunfire with the Secret Service, and ultimately being taken down. A Secret Service agent was shot in the process, being treated at the hospital. Luckily, he was wearing a vest. This is the suspect right now. We don't know his name just yet. We know he's from California. Police are describing him as a lone gunman for now. It is unclear exactly who his target was, but the president was in the ballroom. That concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have much more coverage here on NBC News Now and at NBCNews.com. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Layton. We have been following breaking news out of Washington, D.C. tonight. Police saying a lone gunman armed with multiple weapons charged a security checkpoint in the lobby outside the White House Correspondents Dinner in D.C. Now, in the last hour, we have heard from President Trump, who was evacuated from the event and is safe, as well as local law enforcement who say the suspect was stopped by Secret Service and apprehended before he was able to breach the doors of that dinner. And now at this hour, we know from police that the suspect lives in California and he was a guest at the hotel, with police saying the suspect used a long gun. We also know that one Secret Service agent was injured and is being treated at a local hospital. Officials already announcing several charges the suspect will face, saying more are coming, and saying the suspect will be arraigned in court on Monday. Let's go straight to NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who was at that dinner tonight. Gabe, what is the latest?
Jessica, a very fast unfolding situation, and we've just heard from the D.C. police chief. We've also just heard from the President of the United States here at the White House. This unfolded several hours ago, as you mentioned, and it was a surreal scene inside the Washington Hilton, inside that ballroom. The President saying that he heard some what he thought were trays falling in the distance. It turned out to be gunshots. I can tell you, as someone who was sitting inside that room, sitting just a few seats down from Secretary Doug Burgum and just a few seats down from Secretary of State Marco Rubio as well. This was very sudden. It was at the beginning of the dinner during the salad course when Secret Service agents stormed into that ballroom and started whisking away cabinet secretaries one by one. By the time I looked right behind me, my back was to the stage, the president had already been taken out. This happened very quickly. And of course, it wasn't just the President of the United States inside that room. Vice President J.D. Vance was also sitting a few seats down from the president, and other top administration officials, including Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, the First Lady, of course, and other members of the Trump administration. The president, in his remarks, struck a very reflective tone. He was asked if this was the cost of doing business politically in America. The president saying perhaps it is, but also pointing to a rise in political violence really around the world, and saying that he was a political leader that did big things, that accomplished a lot of things, and that made him a target. Law enforcement at this point has been very careful to say, or not to say rather, who was the intended target of this alleged gunman, whether he was specifically targeting the president, whether he may have been targeting cabinet officials or the hundreds of journalists inside that room. In any case, it was incredible to watch that security footage posted by the president on social media very quickly after this event, wanting to get out there, just how quickly law enforcement acted in order to save lives here. The suspect can be seen bolting through that security perimeter. Law enforcement says that he was carrying a shotgun. He did fire at least one shot, hitting a law enforcement officer in his bulletproof vest, according to the president. You see that video right there, and that Secret Service agent, we're told, is recovering at this point. The suspect also taken to the hospital. You heard local authorities and as well as federal authorities say that he will be charged, and right now investigators are combing through the suspect's apartment in California, according to federal officials. The president also using this opportunity to argue for his controversial ballroom that he wants to build here on the White House grounds. The East Wing was demolished for it. The courts have hung up the construction of that ballroom and have allowed the bunker for national security purposes to continue at this point. The president saying that the Washington Hilton, in his opinion, was not a particularly secure building. However, federal authorities have repeatedly praised law enforcement and the Secret Service for acting very quickly in this instance to save lives. Again, this is still very early in the investigation. They're very careful not to assign any political motives right here. The president, though, saying that he believed him to be a lone wolf, a quote, lone wolf whack job, according to the president, and seeming to suggest that this was someone that wanted to do harm to a great amount of people, and still law enforcement stepped in and managed to save lives here. It was a surreal experience being inside that ballroom, Jessica, but it was over in a matter of minutes. The president saying that he wants to reschedule this White House Correspondents' Dinner to happen again at some point in the next 30 days. He also called on the country to, quote, resolve our differences. Jessica.
Gabe, I am very struck by what he said about the message of unity and resolving differences, and saying that everybody in that room tonight was united. And it, of course, comes on the heels of a long, contentious relationship between President Trump and the press. We know that he has hurled many insults toward press. He's called women piggy. He has said that reporters are nasty and ugly. I wonder, after hearing the president's words tonight from the briefing room, as he talked about we were all sort of united tonight, how that message struck you and how it is striking other correspondents tonight.
It was, there's an interesting dichotomy with the president. Certainly he has a very contentious relationship with many reporters and with the press in general. His supporters will argue that he is very accessible, and indeed he does take phone calls from reporters quite often on a variety of issues. He has many press conferences, holds many what we call gaggles, short informal conversations with reporters. Still, though, the president does make it a habit of being very confrontational with the press. We didn't hear any of that tonight. There was a sense in that room where we were awaiting the president's remarks. Certainly, we were very curious as to what tone he might have. This is, of course, the first White House Correspondents Association dinner that the president has attended while in office. He had previously gone to 2 dinners before he took office as a private citizen. And the president, he talked about that early in his remarks in the briefing room here in the West Wing just a short time ago. He said that he planned to get up there and rip the press, and that he probably that message wouldn't be very well received after tonight's events, and that he probably would deliver a very boring speech if this event were to indeed happen and be rescheduled. But certainly this was not anything, this was certainly the last thing people in that room wanted to see. As I dove down to the ground as the Secret Service was bolting into that room, I could hear at least one person next to me say, "Not tonight." Of all nights, this was a night where it was, there was bipartisan. There was a sense of wanting the president there and hearing his message. He was there by invitation. There were numerous cabinet officials, some sitting in my table and in other tables as well. And it was a night to honor the First Amendment, also to honor scholarships and to distribute scholarships. So it was a sense that this really was just an incredible shame that this had to happen, and a sense of gratitude, however, that no one lost their lives on what otherwise could have been a very tragic night, Jessica.
That's right. Grateful that everybody, for the most part, came away safe, that Secret Service agent who was shot was, according to President Trump, saved by his bulletproof vest, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Gabe Gutierrez reporting live for us tonight, still in his tuxedo from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Thank you so much. I think that's been one of the most striking images tonight, is seeing the reporters in their gowns, in their tuxedos, who were supposed to enjoy a nice night out, an honor to be at that dinner, really, as a member of the press, who jumped into action to report on a very difficult story that they found themselves as a witness to and at the center at. And one of our correspondents who is in that position is NBC's Julie Sirkin. She was also at that dinner. Let's go back to Julie. And Julie, I'm wondering what your biggest takeaways were tonight from what the president has said, but let me start with what's happening with you and around you outside the hotel right now.
I'll start off with when the president had said the Secret Service response, the law enforcement response, praising the swift response, and you could see it still around me now, there are law enforcement vehicles moving in and out. You see that large law enforcement vehicle behind me. We're not quite sure what it's here to do, but perhaps to process the scene. It was looking to pull into a parking spot that is a little bit closer to the Hilton, which is in my far right corner. And I'll also tell you, we've seen members of U.S. Capitol Police. Right now, I'm looking at an officer who's wearing a U.S. Capitol Police vest. I'm not sure if you could see him because this whole area is still extremely blocked off. And Corey, I talked about this a little bit with Tom, but now probably 10-15 minutes ago, I watched somebody in a car pull up to this barricade. They are not allowed to drive through. This has been blocked off all the way, multiple blocks down this way, because the hotel is in this direction where the dinner was held. And yet this person in their car was asked who they were. They seemed to say the Minnesota councilwoman, the First Lady of the United States. They cursed, and then they put their foot on the gas pedal and drove right through the police barricade. I watched an officer get in their car and chase them, but it just shows you how sensitive this situation is, that it's still extremely active. Corey, we were talking, Jessica, excuse me, it's been a long day of coverage. We were talking earlier about the response, about the fact that this dinner potentially could have still gone on. What I heard from the president, and I was at the White House earlier today, he was getting ready for this night, as Gabe had said, his first dinner as president after a contentious relationship with the press tonight, talking about the way that he saw the unified response in the crowd. I told you earlier I was walking out with Congressman Jamie Raskin, who looked at me and said the show must go on in a similar fashion that the president later posted on social media. This is a heightened environment. There is no doubt about it. In some cases, to some extent, people are used to it. They prepare more for it. Secret Service was preparing for it. But as you saw in that video, when you saw that individual charge at them, this was a dinner that just began. I was talking to my colleague, Jose Diaz-Balart, to my right. We just started eating the salad. The president was going to take the stage and speak shortly after the White House Correspondents Association president spoke. And then I heard what sounded like gunshots. I was that close to that part of the room. And then my colleagues told us to get under the table. As I mentioned earlier, I heard Secret Service or police, now I know, footsteps on the table. They were getting out the VIPs, getting out the lawmakers. We've seen a flood of posts from lawmakers thanking the response there tonight. It was chaotic, and yet it seemed like it was under control, even when there were so many unanswered questions in the room. And right now, as we're standing here and this whole area is still blocked off, we are seeing people trying to get to their homes. One man was just jogging through, had his headphones on. He was stopped by police. He didn't mean to go through this barricade, but then, as I just told you, there was somebody in a car who intentionally drove through. So this is, while they have apprehended that one suspect they say was involved in this case, this is still a very tense situation. I should tell you, the person in the car that ran through here, that happened minutes after the DC chief of police, after the mayor finished speaking, again, feet from where I am now. And we asked them for a response, and immediately they didn't have one. So just still a very active situation here. The president's saying this dinner will happen again. I was talking to somebody who works in the hotel who said they're meeting on Monday to determine which date. But just a very raw situation out here outside of the Washington Hilton, where there's still a lot of crime scene tape, a lot of caution tape, and a lot of processing of the scene taking place. Jessica?
Julie, thank you so much. Stand by, because we will come back to you in our next hour. But for now, we want to go to NBC News law enforcement analyst and former ATF special agent in charge, Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, thank you for being with us for this special report tonight. Where to even begin? Let me start with your initial thoughts and where this investigation is at this moment.
Well, I think we just have to look at the events as they unfolded. So we have a criminal actor who checks into the hotel. The hotel is not secured from anybody bringing a gun in there. You could bring a gun in your baggage as you check into the hotel. Nobody's searching you. So he checks into the hotel. He could easily bring in firearms. He had a shotgun, a handgun, and he had some knives and sharp-edged weapons. The security perimeter established by the Secret Service is inside the hotel, and that's where we see the assailant charge through the magnetometer. And magnetometers, we've had a lot of experience dealing with assailants at magnetometers over the years, but I've had cases where people come up to the magnetometer, like in a courthouse, and just kill the two deputies that are manning the magnetometer, and then they just walk through the thing and it buzzes, but so what? There's nobody there. They're dead. This guy chose to charge past the magnetometer. The video's a little fuzzy, but it looks like he has a long gun, probably a shotgun, and it fires at a uniformed Secret Service division officer who kind of steps back or goes back as he's going by. That's probably the officer who was struck in the vest. He's lucky he's alive because, you know, if that shotgun blast had been a little higher, even one shotgun pellet to the face could be fatal. So that officer's very lucky. The vest saved him. And then other officers tackled the assailant, and the assailant was not shot, according to the commanders who were on the scene there. So he was not near the ballroom door. They got him at the lobby below the entrance to the ballroom door. So the security worked. But the Washington Hilton, you know, of course, it's famous or it's infamous for the place where Ronald Reagan was shot by John Hinckley in 1981. And, you know, I was on a Secret Service detail in 1981 when John Hinckley tried to penetrate it here in Nashville and tried to kill Jimmy Carter. He had 3 guns on him, and he couldn't get through our security that day, and he got arrested at the Nashville airport with the 3 pistols, and he shot Ronald Reagan 6 months later. So these assailants get very determined. This guy, clearly, he had the 3 guns. He checked in. He waited till the dinner started. We don't know clearly his motive. Was his target only the president? Was it, you know, officials of the government? Was it just mass murder to make a scene, you know, with a terror motive? Terrorism at its base is theater. And you're not going to get any more theater in the world than the Washington's White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's going to be widely seen through the world. So it's a place for terrorist theater. So that could be a motivation here. We don't know if he's a lone wolf. There's a lot of people saying that, or I like to call him a lone mad dog. We really don't know that yet. Was he sent by others? Did he have handlers? Was he financed by someone? Is he a member of a terrorist group? We don't really know. I think it's too preliminary right now to find that out. Agents are in California doing the search of his apartment. There should be some answers there. Maybe he's posted some on his digital media, and we can learn his innermost thoughts, you know, leading up to this attack. But clearly, if he came from California in the last few days, they'll be able to find that out pretty easy. But by checking into that Washington Hilton, you know, for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, he's got a purpose, probably terror, mass murder, maybe attack the president or the cabinet. It's certainly a great theater for him.
Yes, a room full of hundreds and hundreds of high-ranking officials, the president, the nation's top correspondents and press teams. Jim, we know that authorities are searching this man's residence in California right now, but we have learned he has no record and he was not on the radar of any local law enforcement. Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems not typical that somebody who attempts to be in this kind of situation, create such chaos and potentially mass murder in a situation like this is not even on the radar of anybody. How typical is that, and how could he have gone unchecked?
Well, you're exactly right, but we are in a place in the world right now where the world is on fire. I mean, we have major events going on in the world. We have a war in Europe and Ukraine. We have a war in Lebanon with Hezbollah and Israel. We have the Iran war. We have naval blockades. I mean, the world is in strife, and this affects people's lives, and they react to it. You know, sometimes we see people who are on the edges of those attacks. We saw a recent one where a Jewish community center was attacked because the guy's family was killed by an Israeli strike in Lebanon. Even though his family was members of Hezbollah, he wanted to retaliate against the Jewish community. So we don't know if this is related to any world events at all. We don't know. But we do know that world events can affect people, and it can affect them, you know, to act out in criminal and violent ways. Even if they don't have a prior criminal record, they can be affected. So we need to look for that here. We need to see, you know, what changed in this assailant's life, what motivated him, to go to this dinner at this time to make this particular attack. There's some reason for it. Every crime has a reason. There's no crime without motive. He's got a motive, and we need to uncover it and to see if there's any Confederates, associates, co-conspirators, financiers that might have pushed him to it, or is it all, wrapped in his head in some kind of grudge he's developed, and he wants to attack and get everybody to pay attention to him.
Jim, always appreciate your expertise and your insight and your vast knowledge about these sort of things. Stay with us, please. For now, we want to go to White House correspondent Monica Alba, who was at that dinner. Monica, you're still in your gown from the dinner. You're joining us from our bureau. What are you hearing from your sources?
Yeah, Jessica, and just to recap a little bit of what you were just discussing there, I mean, the fact that the President of the United States was at this dinner a number of hours ago, then was moved to the White House where he did deliver those remarks. And here we are sitting and talking about this at the time when typically this dinner would have been wrapping up had it gone on as normal, as traditional, where the President would have made a lengthy speech we expect tonight. But of course, these are very, very different circumstances after everything that unfolded. And the President himself made news and shared, of course, some new details when he did brief reporters and take questions just a short time ago, revealing that he had even spoken with the officer who he says was shot in the chest earlier this evening. He said he had been able to speak with him, that he was doing great, that he's in great shape and has very high spirits, and he's a very proud guy. Now, this is a president who has typically now, when we have seen certain crimes and alleged crimes take place, he is one of the first people sometimes to share the information, the images, the video, and what he has posted on his social media account certainly was that. Before then, he came before cameras and was able to detail a little bit more of this information. And the president even said, Jessica, that he has studied now assassination attempts and plots, given that he has been the subject of at least two. Now, it is too early to say, and the president acknowledged that, what the target was of this intended violence tonight, where this was potentially heading. There will be a very lengthy, we expect, investigation into all of that, and there will be time to analyze all of that. But the president did put that into this context, given what he has experienced. He was asked specifically tonight whether he goes around sort of operating in his daily life nervous, that this is a possibility, that this is something that he could confront, as he did, obviously, when he was still a candidate back in 2024 during that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. And he said that it is something that he lives with, but that he did feel that this event was less secure potentially than he would have wanted it to be. And just to paint a bit of a picture of that for our audience, this was a situation where you needed to flash a paper ticket basically to get on the grounds of the Washington Hilton, the hotel itself. But you could enter the lobby without going through a security screening, without going through what you would encounter at an airport or at a mass sporting event or at a concert. That part of the security was further down into the depths of the Hilton, and you had to only access the ballroom through a couple of levels, and it was at that last level where you did have to go through magnetometers and have your bags reviewed and be searched in the way you would always be if you were going to be attending an event with the president or with a very high-profile U.S. government official or otherwise. And so the president did seem to raise questions about that. He did imply that he wanted there to be a very long investigation looking at what could have been some security flaws here. But I have to tell you, Jessica, that when you are in a room like this with the President of the United States, that is typically when you feel you could be in a very safe environment, given the level of security, given the presence of agents, given all of the thought that would go into an event like this. And in the moment when it was unclear what the shots that had rung out, what they were, in that instance where we heard the pop, 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 there was a moment where it was unclear, but when you did see so many different agents and officers spring into action, to remove the VIPs in the room, to remove the lawmakers, the cabinet officials. Speaker Johnson and his wife were right behind the table where we were sitting, and they were taken out. You saw Whip Emmer also removed from the room fairly quickly, and others in different directions. Certainly when you're in a venue like this, there are a lot of different exit points and entrance points because of just what a massive quantity of people are in this ballroom. So in terms of what was happening in the moment, there were a lot of questions, obviously, and it took a long time before we could figure out exactly what had occurred. But they did react very quickly in getting everyone out. But President Trump making that point tonight, Jessica, that he does think that there are problems with the way that obviously this was handled, though he was pleased with how quickly those officers were able to respond to the suspect and were able to apprehend him. And now, of course, again, there will be a very lengthy inquiry into exactly what may have led up to this. But the fact that it does appear this individual was a guest of the hotel. There were guests of the hotel that were milling about the lobby, that were able to be around this dinner and with quite close proximity to those security checkpoints. But in terms of sort of where this goes from here, it was interesting that the president was asked whether this is something that sort of factors into the way that he's going to approach other events or change his habits. We should point out that after the Butler shooting, the Secret Service did make a lot of changes about the way that President Trump makes decisions about where he appears and how. In fact, they added bulletproof glass anywhere where he's going to be outdoors, for instance. And we saw some other changes and other changes that they wouldn't detail because they don't want to get into the specifics of some of that security operation footprint that you can expect. But I wouldn't be surprised, Jessica, if now there are additional potential even shifts or changes, or at a very minimum discussions about what might change about his security imprint here.
And Monica, we do know that the president in his remarks earlier did use this as sort of a platform to pitched the importance of his $400 million ballroom, saying that it would be more secure than a place like the Washington Hilton. And we know that this all now does raise new questions about security at any hotel. If this person who was a guest at the hotel was able to be that close to these dignitaries, these VIPs, the president and the first lady and the cabinet, certainly a lot of questions and a lot more investigation. Monica, please stand by because we have a lot more reporting to do in the next hour. But for now, let's bring in NBC's legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach, who is outside the Washington Hilton right now. But Gary, you were inside the room as well when this panic and chaos erupted. What can you tell us?
Yeah, just to give everyone a sense of what the Washington Hilton's ballroom sort of looks like, right? There's this main floor. That's one of the places where Monica was sitting. And then on the right side, there is a sort of an elevated area. And I was sitting sort of in the elevated area on the right side. So I had a bit of a bird's eye view as to what was happening across the entire ballroom. And after the shots allegedly rang out, we saw dozens of members of Secret Service, dozens of members of federal law enforcement rushing in from the back of the room towards the dais where the president, the vice president, and members of the White House Correspondents Association were seated. And they were also going towards the secretaries and the members of the cabinet that were seated across the ballroom. And then, I'm sorry, what was that?
Gary, go ahead. I'm talking to a producer. I apologize.
Oh. All good. And then so there was, once we were in there, it was about an hour or so when there was a lot of confusion, as Monica was talking about, a lot of chaos, and not entirely sure what exactly was going on outside of the ballroom, because of course we're all journalists inside the room, so many of us had our phones out and we were recording what was happening inside. But it really wasn't until we saw the videos that were posted by President Trump and the photos that were posted by President Trump on Truth Social that we really got a sense of exactly what happened and how it happened. Of course, when we talk about the investigation, those videos and those photos are going to be crucial to this. And as we know, this suspect, as the U.S. Attorney here in D.C., Jeanine Pirro, mentioned, will be appearing for his initial appearance in Washington, D.C. in federal court on Monday. That is a typical process. Anytime anybody is charged with a crime here in Washington, D.C., they do make an initial appearance if it's a federal crime in federal court. And then after that, there will be a decision as to whether or not he's going to plead guilty or not guilty, and then whether or not he is detained pending trial. Certainly with an incident like this, when there was a firearm involved, very often the prosecutor's office will ask for the individual to be detained, and very often the federal judge will agree with that assessment because of the serious nature that could have happened here in this instance. Of course, it is of great credit to the law enforcement here to ensure that more damage was not done in this incident.
Yeah, Gary, I keep coming back to the video of really that swift movement of the Secret Service and really powerful and extraordinary images of getting the president, of course, the First Lady, all the dignitaries and all the VIPs on stage at that head table. It really just remarkable how, yes, it looked chaotic and it looked panicked, but also it looked incredibly controlled. And I imagine that you will all at least felt quite safe in that moment that things were being handled. We have about 20 seconds before we head into a new report.
Yeah. Real quick, this is something they train for, right? This is exactly the kind of incident that they train for, and so certainly they were prepared for something like this to happen.
Gary, thank you so much. Great reporting. Please stand by as we prepare for a new special report at the top of the hour. Hi, I'm Jessica Layton in New York. It is the top of the hour, and we've been following breaking news of a shooting incident outside the White House Correspondents Dinner in Washington, D.C. The president was forced to evacuate, and he was not injured, along with the First Lady and members of his cabinet who were also attending. The president saying he heard a loud noise and thought it was the sound of a tray dropping and was quickly rushed off that stage. Here is what we know right now. Officials say a lone gunman armed with multiple weapons breached a security checkpoint in the lobby and was apprehended. The suspect fired a shot using a long gun, and a Secret Service agent was injured. The president saying he was shot in the chest but was saved by his bulletproof vest and is doing well. That Secret Service agent is being treated at a local hospital. The suspect is also being evaluated at a hospital but was not hit by gunfire. Police say there is no active danger to the public now. We are learning some new information right now about the suspect. Officials say he is a man in his early 30s who lives in California. He was a guest at the Washington Hilton where that event was being held, but we're told he has no record and was not on the radar of any local law enforcement. Officials say the suspect will face several federal charges and will be arraigned in court on Monday. The president spoke at the White House after he was evacuated. Here is some of what he had to say about the event. All right, we are going to have that a little later in this hour, but for now, let's go to NBC's Gabe Gutierrez, who was at the dinner. He is still joining us in his tuxedo tonight. Gabe, we know it's been a long night for you. Glad you and all of our colleagues are okay. What are you hearing from your sources at this hour?
Well, certainly, Jessica, this was something that no one wanted to see happen at this dinner, a dinner meant to bring journalists together, and also members of the administration. The president, of course, not having gone to a previous White House Correspondents Association dinner while in office. This was the first time that he was set to attend, the first time that he was set to speak. And inside the room, hundreds of journalists as well as administration officials had been waiting to hear his remarks. This had happened very early on in the dinner. The Star-Spangled Banner had just played. The president of the White House Correspondents Association had just spoken and welcomed everyone to the dinner. The president was sitting on stage along with the First Lady and also Vice President J.D. Vance. In the table next to me, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was there, as well as the Energy Secretary. Also Secretary Doug Burgum was at my table as well. And as you see in the video right there, this all happened very suddenly, and there was a lot of confusion inside the room as Secret Service agents stormed into the room and started going to each of the high-level cabinet officials and protecting them as they whisked away the president. It was by the time I had turned around, the president had already been whisked out of the room. Now, it was a very fast developing situation. There was some confusion about whether the event would go on as planned. In the moments following that, the president of the White House Correspondents Association, WH went on and said that they were trying to figure out what would happen next, and then came out and made the announcement that following protocol, the president would actually leave the venue and that he wished to have this dinner again in the next 30 days. Now, then we came here to the White House, hence why I'm still in my dress clothes and the tuxedo, and members of the White House press corps were able to hear from the president directly, as well as the Attorney General and the FBI director and other members of the administration. The president gave a little bit more information about the suspect, as you described him, a man in his 30s, which, by the way, now investigators are combing through his apartment in California. He's not been publicly identified by name, but the president posting those pictures that you're seeing on your screen, as well as that security footage of the suspect allegedly running through that security checkpoint. The president using this opportunity to argue why a secure venue is needed here at the White House. He used it as an opportunity to argue why he wants to build his ballroom inside the White House, funded by private donations, but has been very controversial and has temporarily been at least halted by the courts. But the president saying that the Washington Hilton, where the Correspondents' Dinner was being held, was not a particularly secure building in his view. Now, for those of viewers just joining us and just seeing this footage that you see there on your screen, that security checkpoint was on a different floor than the actual ballroom and was not very close to the ballroom itself. And that is why law enforcement officials, both local and federal, have been saying that this is what worked, that the security checkpoint was able to detect this potential gunman, and when he ran past it, they were able to act very quickly, as you see in that video. Still, the president saying that overall this wasn't a very secure building. He was asked several questions that made him reflect a little bit about political violence in this country. Of course, the president, the target of previous assassination attempts, and the president saying that he believed that, while he didn't say he was specifically the target in this case, but that in previous assassination attempts, so that he could be a target because he is a very consequential political figure, and that because he has done so much, then he could potentially be a target here. When it comes to law enforcement, they're not ascribing any political motivation to this just yet. The president saying that he believes this to be a lone wolf, and indeed we heard that confirmed by the D.C. police chief who said that there doesn't appear to be any general threat to the public here, and that he was acting alone. But certainly there will be a lot of questions in the coming hours and days about how he brought his weapon into the Washington Hilton. We did hear from local officials that he was staying at that hotel. Unclear if he may have assembled his weapon in his room, brought it in previously. When did he decide to go downstairs and go into that security checkpoint? And indeed, whether he was targeting the president, whether he was targeting cabinet officials, whether he may have been wanted to cause damage and hurt journalists in that room, that is all unclear at this point. It is remarkable, though, no lives were lost here. That is something that the journalists in that room, including myself, are very grateful for. And on a night where it was a very energetic night, eager to hear the president speak, unfortunately it ended in gunfire, but thankfully no lives were lost, Jessica.
Yeah, Gabe, as a reporter covering the president, you do often feel that wherever the president is the safest place to be on any given day, given the security and the protocols that are in place. Can you give us a sense, and I know we spoke about this earlier, but we're in a new hour of coverage, give us a sense of the type of security, the layers that you had to go through to get from outside the hotel inside the ballroom?
Well, the Washington Correspondents Association Dinner is a very extremely high-profile event in Washington, even more so when the president does attend. As I mentioned, the president had not attended last year. He did attend this year. But whenever a president of the United States attends any event, it is high security, the utmost security type of event. Tonight in particular, the Washington Hilton is an old facility. It has a lot of different entrances. There is a large perimeter around the Washington Hilton because there were also a significant number of protesters, not just with the because of the war in Iran. In previous years, there have been the Israel-Hamas war. There were protesters, I remember last year, and so it can be difficult to get in. Usually when you go, if you arrive at transportation, you're dropped off several blocks away, and you have to walk in. They check your tickets before you enter the actual building. Once you're there, it can be very crowded. There is a metal detector well before you get into the actual ballroom. Only one set of metal detectors. There's multiple metal detectors for different entrances, but everyone goes through them and they ask to see your tickets. If you look at that video that the president posted, it appears that this suspect barged through that metal detector, and he was quickly stopped by Secret Service agents. Now, when did this actually happen during the dinner? The reason you don't see, many other people going through that checkpoint is because the dinner had already started. There may have been people nearby, perhaps using the restroom on a different floor, but the actual dinner was underway. It was during the salad course. Again, everyone had been welcomed. Everyone had heard the Star-Spangled Banner being played. And so we were awaiting the president to give remarks in not a very long time. But this all just happened very suddenly. But very, very tight security. The U.S. Attorney, Jeanine Pirro, as well as other federal law enforcement officials, they are stressing that the Secret Service did their job in this case and saved many lives, even though one of them did take one gunshot to his body armor, to his bulletproof vest, and he's recovering and expected to be okay.
Yeah, the video of Secret Service swiftly evacuating everyone at that head table is truly remarkable. Gabe Gutierrez, thanks so much. The president spoke at the White House after being evacuated. Here's some of what he had to say about what happened tonight.
One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun. And the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He is has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him. And he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, it's not a particularly secure building. And I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the D.C. police, and we just spoke with the mayor. And when we're finished, the police chief is going to take over and discuss it also from their viewpoint. But they also performed exactly as they were supposed to, and you see the attacker in different positions, but you also see the attacker totally subdued and under control. So as you know, this is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. In Butler, Pennsylvania, less than 2 years ago, all know that story, and in Palm Beach, Florida, a few months after that, we came close. We really had, again, we had some great work done by law enforcement. But in light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people, and there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched I watched and I was very, very impressed by that. But we were, First Lady and I were taken very well care of, very quickly rushed off the stage. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's here, was likewise beautifully done. He was just saying how quickly everybody acted, law enforcement, Secret Service in particular in this case, but law enforcement. Marco had the same thing. Pete was there. Pete didn't want any help. He didn't want anybody to help him. He doesn't want anybody to help him, but he did get some, didn't you? And I think you also said that it was very impressive.
The president speaking from the White House briefing room shortly after he was evacuated from the White House Correspondents' Dinner after a shooting at the Washington Hilton. The president, as you see there, is safe. The rest of his cabinet is safe. A Secret Service agent was shot in the chest, but the president says he was saved by his bulletproof vest and is doing well. The president, in that soundbite there, praising law enforcement and saying that we need to recommit to resolving differences. Let's bring back White House correspondent Monica Alba, who was also at that dinner. Monica, I wonder what struck you about the president's remarks tonight.
What was really notable, Jessica, is also just in the timeline of all of this, the fact that the Secret Service did decide to hold the president at the Hilton for a length of time to determine what could take place next. And this is actually a hotel that, for a terrible historic reason, has actually increased security because it is the site of where there was the shooting many years ago in the 80s. That is actually why the name of the briefing room where the president was speaking from is named after the man who was shot, Hinckley. That is why, who shot him. So the history here that you actually just see is notable for many different reasons. But in terms of what we're talking about with the president and the timing of all of this, the fact that they were holding there, they were waiting and trying to figure out whether there was any instance in which potentially this dinner could resume does tell you also a lot about how fast moving this was and how they were still trying to get information in real time to also see whether they could move the president or not. And eventually they did move him back to the White House. And it really stood out to me, Jessica, to see all of the people who were with him in the briefing room. The fact that First Lady Melania Trump was with him, was standing there just off the screen, which the president acknowledged, is interesting because she's someone who doesn't speak publicly very often, but in a recent documentary that was released, she shared her own security concerns, specifically when she was talking about whether she wanted to get out of the motorcade at the inaugural parade last year, and saying that she had some concerns about that because you never know who could be around and whether some of those areas might be secured in the way that she wanted them to be. And so the fact that she was there, obviously, at this event sitting next to the president, she was rushed out the same way that he was. And then she was there in the briefing room. It seemed this was sort of a united front that the administration wanted to present. But to have the president, the first lady, the secretary of state, the DHS secretary, the FBI director, all of these different people standing there was really just a very unique moment. That is not something that you see very often. So just from that perspective, that, of course, stood out to us. But also the president talking about the fact that he wants to see this event rescheduled. He wants to see this go forward. It does sound like from the White House Correspondents Association, this is something that in the next 30 days or so could take place again. It's unclear logistically exactly where that would happen or how that would happen and what work would have to go into that in terms of some of the security concerns that we have been discussing. But the president did indicate that he was excited to be there tonight. He was supposed to be making remarks at some point and said that he still at some point wanted to do that. So we'll see if that actually takes place. But I do think now, in terms of the investigation and where this goes from here, that is going to be a major focus of the administration. And you did have the president bringing up his $400 million ballroom project that he is working on right now. It is facing some legal hurdles at the White House, but he's arguing that events like the one tonight could be hosted there potentially, or other events of that caliber, he says, and he argues, for security reasons. But at the same time, Jessica, the president really tried to talk about this from the perspective that he doesn't necessarily live every day concerned that he could be facing another assassination assassination attempt, even though he has faced several, even though we don't know all the details or the motive of tonight's intended violence. But he did reveal that he's been studying assassination plots. He has looked at them since the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania 2 years ago, and that this is something that is on his mind, but that he says he can't let it control his life or really affect some of his day-to-day decisions, even though I think it is probably safe to say that there will be amplified security discussions and conversations about what might happen here and what might change in the wake of this.
Monica Alba reporting from our bureau in D.C., still in your gown from the event. It just goes to show the very quick turn that this evening took for all of the press across the nation. Monica, thank you. Let's go back to NBC News law enforcement analyst and former ATF special agent in charge, Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, this guy, we're told, is from California. We know that law enforcement is searching the residence in California right now. No criminal record and was not known to any law enforcement department. How does somebody like this fly under the radar?
Well, you know, what's going on for this guy, Jessica, may all be in his mind. Hopefully some of it he's posted on his computer, on his in his digital life, his phone, however he uses the web. So that may uncover some of his motives in the lead up to the event. Also, you know, we don't know right now if he's a lone mad dog actor. We really don't know. Nobody really can know this early because we just don't have enough facts. The search at his house in California may turn that up. You know, these guys can be pushed to things too. They can think they're members of groups, you know, worldwide through the web. They're members of terrorist groups, or they're members sympathetic to foreign governments who may be at war with the United States or at odds with the United States. And they can grasp onto those communities and try to be a part of it. Or they could be suffering just a serious mental breakdown, or they could just want, you know, they have a grudge against the United States or the government or the president or who knows. Or they just want to create a mass murder event at the White House Correspondents Dinner, which the world can be focused on, was focused on tonight. So it is a place where a person would get a lot of attention, you know, if they were to succeed or even not succeed. Look at this guy, he failed. Whether he was after the president, the cabinet, or just a mass murder attack, he failed. And look at all the attention he's already achieved. Imagine if he had succeeded in killing a lot of people, or one of our leaders. So this is why events like this have to be strongly secured. And it is difficult to secure a big hotel like that. I've been on those Secret Service details in those big hotels. It's tough. It takes a lot of people. And it's not like the White House and the grounds of the White House, which are permanently secured by the service.
Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Secured.
Jim, I apologize to interrupt. We have some brand new video, and it kind of speaks to your point about Secret Service. This is J.D. Vance, Vice President, being rushed out from that head table on stage, followed by the president as well. You can see really the chaos and the swift movement, though, that the Secret Service takes to get these high-ranking officials, these dignitaries, the president and the vice president, out of harm's way, behind the curtain. You talked about being on these security details before. First, your reaction to the methodical way in which this was all orchestrated tonight and the way that they were able to get them out to safety so quickly.
Well, they did a good job doing that, moving the president and the vice president out, and the other cabinet members have protection details as well, and they were moved out. But you know what you worry about on these details, what the service worries about, is multiple attackers. You know, we're looking at the security movement from one failed attacker. He didn't even breach the first line of security. And you know, you always have in your mind, well, what if there's multiple attackers? And they're coming at you from all different angles. What if there's a bomb attack, explosive attack? I mean, there's a lot to plan for and keep track of. You know, many years ago, the IRA put a bomb in a hotel in Brighton, England, a year prior to Margaret Thatcher going to speak there. They knew she was going to speak there in a year because it was scheduled. And so they went into the hotel, and in the wall, they planted a bomb on a time delay for a year. Now, luckily, it was found and disarmed, and she wasn't injured. But think about the planning and the diabolical attempt on the life of a political leader by a terrorist group who wanted to kill her. So when you're the service here, you're acting on this guy, you know, when you're one of the commanders there, the special agent in charge of the White House detail there, you're worried about that. You're worried about multiple attackers, not just the one guy you know about, but are they coming at you each which way? And so it's very tough to secure that building when none of the guests in the building have been screened. You could come into the hotel without being screened. And this is clearly how the assailant got in there with the guns, because he wasn't screened. He was a guest in the hotel.
Right, and we're
with a
not
shotgun,
sure.
a handgun, and multiple knives.
We're not sure how long he had been at that hotel. That is certainly something that we hope to learn from this investigation. But yes, inside the hotel with guns. Jim Kavanaugh, always appreciate your expertise and your perspective in these situations. Thank you so much. We want to go back to NBC's legal affairs reporter, Gary Grumbach, who is outside the Washington Hilton. Gary, you were inside the room as well as this was happening. What are your sources telling you just a few hours now removed from the evacuation?
Yeah, I want to talk through, kind of pick up where Jim left off there and talk about what the next steps are for this suspect. This individual, who we believe is a 31-year-old from the state of California, that's according to the president, is going to be, according to U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, making his arraignment and his initial appearance on Monday here in federal court in D.C. Now, charges have yet to be actually filed in the federal docket, but she says there's going to be at least 2 charges filed, including 1, use of a firearm during the commission of a crime, and 2, assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Of course, we do know that there was at least 1 federal agent that was injured during this incident. We don't exactly know how they were shot, but they were indeed shot. So that will happen on Monday. Basically, what will happen is this individual will go before a federal judge here in Washington, D.C. He will either plead guilty or not guilty, and then the judge will decide whether or not to remand him pending the rest of the trial and as this case plays out. Prosecutors in this case, given these types of charges, will very likely ask for the individual to be kept behind bars while this plays out. Judges in this sort of situations are also very likely to agree with prosecutors when this type of situation happens, but certainly a lot to investigate. The good thing about this happening, if there is any sort of silver lining to this, is that it happened in a hotel, and there are a lot of security cameras in and around the Washington Hilton. So there is a lot to be able to look at, whether it's from the hotel room that we now understand that he did have at the Washington Hilton, from the hallway outside of that, from the lobby area, exactly what his movements were before this incident, perhaps even in the days leading up to this incident, depending on when exactly he checked in to the Washington Hilton. So a lot for investigators to look into here as this investigation is just beginning.
Yeah, an investigation that we know, Gary, will span both coasts, right? Because you have the law enforcement searching the home in California right now and everything happening on the East Coast in D.C. Can you give us a sense from prior experience, what sort of things are they looking for in that home right now?
So in the home in California, or the apartment in California, wherever this individual does end up living, what they're going to be looking for is any signs of motive, right? They don't know why this man did this right now. Apparently, he's not being particularly chatty with law enforcement at the moment. So they're going to be looking for any notes left, right? Like Jim Kavanaugh was saying, anything digital evidence. Are there phones that were left? Are there computers that were left in California? Is there anything, this is something they do very often, they look through the trash, right? Because if you're trying to hide something, you put it in the trash. Well, they're going to look through that trash and try to see in there, maybe there's receipts for bullets, maybe there's receipts for a firearm, or for a plane ticket to get from California to the Washington, D.C. area. Of course, we don't know whether he flew or drove here. That is still something that is all part of the investigation, but they're going to look through that whole house, and they're also going to talk to family members, right? Did mom or dad know anything about this incident? Are there any brothers or sisters or significant others that knew that perhaps he was upset with the political climate, perhaps he was upset with journalists, right? We don't know exactly who he was targeting inside this room, but it was a room filled with political individuals and with journalists, right? And so that was certainly something that investigators will also be looking into, Jessica.
Gary, I think you're one of the first to say tonight that you've heard that he's not being particularly chatty with law enforcement. What else are you hearing about the questioning going on in D.C. at the moment?
So this is the kind of thing that happens on a regular basis. Anytime somebody is taken in for questioning, they're generally speaking, and I want to be general here because we don't know where this individual is taking, they're generally speaking brought to the Washington field office of the FBI, and that is where their questioning would go on. This is going to be with investigators, right? Because this is a federal crime, and certainly because this involved the president, because this involved such high-profile individuals, every bit of law enforcement from the federal level is being used to make sure this individual is properly given the rights he is afforded, but also questioned in the proper ways as well. So that's the kind of thing that would happen at Washington field office in the first several hours after this individual was taken into custody.
Gary, last question. In terms of that video that we are sure is at the hotel, how quickly does it take for law enforcement to get the warrant to be able to view that? Is it instantaneous in a situation like this?
So this is the sort of thing where it is an instantaneous situation where they do need a warrant to be able to look into anywhere, for example, to look into any of his bags or his belongings. But because it's hotel property, they are able to, if the hotel allows them to, which I'm sure the Washington Hilton would be willing to do this in this situation, open the door to his hotel room and allow them to do that.
Chilling, though, that given all the security, all the layers that you all had to go through to get into this ballroom for that dinner tonight, that this person was allegedly in that hotel with so many weapons. Gary Grumbach, thank you so much for your great reporting tonight. The president spoke at the White House shortly after he was evacuated from the Correspondents' Dinner at the Washington Hilton Hotel. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
Well, thank you very much. That was very unexpected, but incredibly acted upon by Secret Service and law enforcement. And this was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press. And in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way very beautiful, a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons. And he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released, for purposes of transparency, clarity, I've ordered it to be put out. You probably have it by now, put out on Truth and put out on many other platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He is has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him, and he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, you know, it's not a particularly secure building, and I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different, because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the D.C. police. And we just spoke with the mayor. And when we're finished, the police chief is going to take over and discuss it also from their viewpoint. but they also performed exactly as they were supposed to. And you see the attacker in different positions, but you also see the attacker totally subdued and under control. So as you know, this is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. In Butler, Pennsylvania, less than 2 years ago, you all know that story, and in Palm Beach, Florida, a few months after that, we came close. We really had, again, we had some great work done by law enforcement. But in light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people. And there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched, and I was very, very impressed by that. But we were, First Lady and I were taken very well care of, very quickly rushed off the stage. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's here, was likewise beautifully done. He was just saying how quickly everybody acted, law enforcement, Secret Service in particular in this case, but law enforcement. Marco had the same thing. Pete was there. Pete didn't want any help. He didn't want anybody to help. He doesn't want anybody to help him, but he did get some, didn't you? And I think you also said that it was very impressive. So with that, I'd like to ask Todd Blanche to come up, say a few words, and tell you it's already underway. The man has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California, and he's a sick person, a very sick person, and we don't want things like this to happen. I think it's very important that I say, though, and I told the representatives of the evening, they did such a beautiful job. It was such a beautiful evening. And again, they're talking about free speech in our Constitution. That's what it's all about, not just White House correspondence. It was really based on free speech in our Constitution. But I said very importantly that we'll do it again within the next 30 days, and we'll make it bigger and better and even nicer. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved. I also want to thank the press, the media. You've been very responsible in your coverage. I will say I've been seeing what's been out. You've been very responsible. So Todd Blanche, I'd like to say a few words, and then we're going to have cash. And then you're going to go on, and we can ask, I guess we can take a couple of questions. I want to thank the First Lady for, that was a rather...
This is Mek Wi Talk breaking news. You have been watching live coverage of a shooting at the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C., where the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and First Lady Melania Trump was evacuated from the Hilton Hotel after a shooting by a lone gunman. That is live coverage of a shooting at the Hilton Hotel where the correspondent dinner, the press correspondent dinner was taking place, and President Donald Trump was evacuated along with other cabinet officials. We are seeing videos where J.D. Vance, the vice president, was really grappled, with his security details taking him out of that hotel. So there you have it, a live coverage of what went on in D.C. earlier on tonight, where the president and the first lady and other cabinet members were evacuated out of that hotel because of a shooting. Well, thank God nothing happened. If he had gotten into the area, would know maybe tonight we'll be here saying something different. But thank God nothing happened. So that has been breaking news right here on the Mek Wi Talk program. Until you hear a voice again, I am Jeffrey Tavares saying so long. May God bless you and thank you all for watching. Good night, everybody. This is Mek Wi Talk breaking news. This is Mek Wi Talk breaking news. This is Mek Wi Talk breaking news. This is Mek Wi Talk breaking news.
When the game gets rough and this life just seems so tough, Mek Wi Talk, my people, Mek Wi Talk. When this town becomes an ugly place, don't let it erase the smile from your face. Mek Wi Talk, people, Mek Wi Talk. Conversation is the key, a guiding light for you and me. Spark a talk and you will see conflict solver A to Z. World leaders master the art of self-defense just by talk. So people, Mek Wi Talk. Hey, we're living in a world that on ourselves we must depend. Mek Wi Talk.